Okay, so we have Jeremy Rubin, the friendly flipper, is going to give you guys a big rundown of what's going on here. So if we can just have people kind of calm down the conversation.
Yeah.
He is on. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you.
Good job being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, my pleasure.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's one person alive. That's good. I'd like to really hand up. Some smiles in the back. Okay, cool. So thanks for being here. It's I know later on in the day, so yeah, I appreciate that. You know, we all have a limited amount of energy and resources, and so I appreciate that you're still sticking it out and being here. So I'm here. I've got a question. Who's ever heard the phrase, "It takes money to make money"?
Yes.
Right? We've all heard that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lie. It takes courage to make money. Yes, it takes more money behind the courage to create more money.
Is that your phone?
That is my phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. But it does not just take money. I'm living proof of it. So a little bit about me. I came from a retail sales background. So why am I here talking about real estate today? Well, I decided I no longer wanted to do retail sales. I hit the point in my career where I was like, I'm done with this. After 13 years, I had gone through, worked at Circuit City back when that was a thing. I had, working for just an hourly rate, was doing pretty well with that, but then, that was just like the first step. Next thing, started working for Verizon, and then that started started a 13-year retail career that ended up just getting to the point where I could not see myself doing that for another 40 years. The alarm, 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m., the alarm clock's beeping. It's a Friday morning just after Thanksgiving for the 13th year in a row. I'm having to work Black Friday. I just don't want that. Yeah, it's once a year, but beyond that, it's like they have so much control over every little aspect of your life. I was just over that. And just spending my days in a gray box like that, I was over it. I was done. I wanted something, wanted something better. So I did something about it. I started flipping houses. How did I do that? Well, I learned all by actually searching on YouTube. So it was just hitting that almost a rock bottom place of, hey, I got to figure out something to do to get out of this, out of my current situation, and doing something that I actually enjoy. My grandfather was a title searcher. No, sorry, my great-grandfather was a title searcher. My grandfather owned a print shop. My dad has been worked for my grandpa for a long time at the print shop, and then started working for himself after the 1994 Northridge earthquake. He could no longer commute to work. So long line of entrepreneur history in my family, and I always knew I wanted to work for myself. So I was slowly, beyond just, the money being okay enough to get by and not really ever getting ahead. It was a bigger want, bigger desire of mine always to work for myself. And I started in a detailing business while I worked at Verizon Wireless. Invested over $12,000 in that. And yeah, it's not a lot of money, but when that's everything you're able to save working a retail job over a year plus, it's significant at that point. So multiple businesses had failed, tried different things, always wanting to get on that path, and finally I came upon real estate. And so let's just dive into a couple flips, because if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's what I'm here to basically say. It's like, if I can do this, no construction background, no finance background, no formal real estate background, retail sales, you can make it happen. So this was this was my very first flip. Prior to this, I actually had flipped 3 wholesale deals, 3 different contracts where I just basically put a property under contract. Who knows what a wholesale deal is, so I don't have to explain that. Pretty much familiar? Okay, so basically, this person agrees to sell me their house at said price. I now have the right to buy it. I can actually assign that right to someone else for a fee. So without coming out of pocket any money, so thank you for allowing me to explain that. I can actually make some money in between. So I've done a couple of those kind of deals. That's how you can get started legitimately without money. If you're down to just hit the pavement, post Craigslist ads, talk to real estate agents, if you use organic marketing methods, you can get started that way. So that's what I did. Then I'm still working at Verizon, still hating my day job, but I'm just getting through, with that ray of hope, because now there's light at the end of the tunnel. So what did I do? I took that first money I made, $6,500 off flipping a mobile home, just putting it under contract, assigning it a mobile home of all things. Like, no one really talks about, that, but it was the first lead that came in, and I'm like, well, let me see what I can do with it. Then made that, cashed that first check, and that's when it really became real to me. Put that into a paid marketing campaign. It started sending out yellow postcards. And so that was like the next evolution in the business. So I went from really, just grassroots marketing efforts to that next step, spending 50 cents on a postcard, and sent out enough postcards that I got a hold of a person who owned a house, a family actually that owned a house, had been a rental for years. The tenants had moved out and leaving it in this condition, which does not look terrible, but it's just run down, as you can see, on the inside, very run down. And they were faced with a dilemma. They can either sell it or fix it and re-rent it. But their long-term tenant had left. They really, had been kind of spoiled by that tenant because they were super low maintenance. They didn't tear the place up, but they didn't really ever have to talk to them. They own the property free and clear. So I presented them with 3 different options. Yes, I can pay you cash, give you this amount, not necessarily in my own cash. We talked to guys that if you were in here and you heard Raul, he's the dude to talk to when it comes to financing properties. Again, you don't necessarily need your own money, but these people had it paid off, and I proposed, like, hey, I will pay you 5% interest for 6 months, and the principal due when we sell the property in 6 months. How does that sound? A lower cash offer and a slightly higher 0 down 6 months, same as cash offer. So I gave them 3 options, and they went with the one where I would pay them monthly payments for 6 months, and I had my hands on a property. So now I just had to come up with the money to fund the renovation. So I'm trying to get out of my day job. I'll pretty much do whatever I can at this point to break free. So how do I fund the rehab? Anyone want to take a guess? Not Raul. Good guess.
Family.
Not family quite, not there quite yet. What's that?
Sweat equity, but everybody
A little bit of sweat equity. I did do the floor because I had some experience in doing hardwood flooring.
pay all the contractors once you sell the house.
Oh, another creative, good option. With this one, I actually maxed out 3 credit cards.
Oh,
So another thing that, okay, it's kind of counter-culture, well, not really counter-culture in America, but getting into debt. So it's like, okay, how can I knew it was going to work. You have these tools at your disposal. You're not supposed to max out your cards, right? It kind of kills your score, but let's forget all that stuff, and just the end result is, okay, I know I've got a project, and if I can fund this $30,000 rehab, I'll end up walking away with somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So it was just that, let's if other people can do it, I can do it. And just keeping my mindset, just, okay, step by step, just take the next step. And I was pretty scared. I'd never done it before. It's my first flip. I'm coming over on my lunch break from Verizon. A couple times actually caught my contractor, who was the first contractor I ever worked with, in the middle of the street, flying a kite on his lunch break. Supposedly, I just happened to roll up on his lunch break. But so all sorts of fun stuff, but got through it in less than 6 months. Got through it, put it on the market. You can see the before and after. We've all seen befores and afters. There is one telltale sign, though, that this might be someone's first flip. And it's in the picture. I'm just curious if anyone can spot it.
the paint stuff.
Bank, good guess. Good guess.
You use the same cabinets.
I did use the same cabinets, and you're warm. You're warm with that one. Purposely use the same cabinets because we were able to refinish them. We added a dishwasher, because there was not one there, extended the counter out. But right there, that was originally where the refrigerator had gone, yeah, so that was kind of my amateurish, like, didn't realize that till after the fact. Oh, well, okay, it's fine, there's a little more, they can put like a very tall base or something on the counter or something, so. But ended up selling that, for 200, purchase price was, okay, so purchase price was $190,000, of which, you know, I'm committing to buy this thing for that price, but I don't have the money, but it's okay. It's like, there's a few mindset shifts that I had to make, such as saying, we buy houses cash. You can buy houses cash. You're not talking about the cash in your pocket or the cash in your bank account, or, you know, you're talking about you have the means to pull together a deal because, you know, people like Raul and, you have other people, partners, investors, associates. So things like that, once I wrapped my head around that, it really opened up a lot of possibilities when you can consider you can buy things or control property without necessarily writing a check, you know, right then and there for it. So with this one, I did make the 3 offers, strategically made the cash offer. I don't know, hope you can see that back there. It's $183,000 and change. Made the same as 6 months, same as cash. I'm not going to give you anything up front, but if you trust me, I will pay you at the end of 6 months everything, $192,000. You know, I thought that was kind of like that third option, just to give them a third option. Not great. It would give them more money than the cash offer, but it kind of helped guide them towards this one, which I really wanted to go for because I didn't really, at this point, I didn't even know that I could get funding from a hard money lender because I didn't really have experience doing it. It had any flips under my belt, so I hadn't actually worked with a hard money lender yet. But luckily for me, they ended up going with that. So $792 a month, plus a renovation funded on credit cards, and we ended up with, you know, the end product there.
And the transfer the title to you.
Yes, so we closed, yeah, it's a great question. So before we started the renovation, the sale was closed, and they were acting as the bank. So I was on the hook for the $190,000, but they weren't worried about it because they would get the house back if I were to leave them. But none of that happened. And over the course of 6 months, then I ended up netting a total profit of $44,000 after just 17 days on the market. So it was, you know, we bought it at the right numbers, we estimated the renovation at the right numbers, which kind of didn't even know what I was doing at that point. I just knew I was getting it at a low enough price that it would be okay. And then that turned into the successful first flip.
What year was this?
That one was 2017 when we sold it. I'm sorry, 2015. Here's the timeline right here. Yeah, so we closed on the purchase in June 17th of 2015. Renovation was about 3 months, and then we sold it on November 12th.
So that third option that you gave them was collecting the money after the renovation?
Yes, so that $190,000, yes, I was just paying them a $792 monthly interest payment for those 6 months. And then when we closed on the sale, the money basically that I owed them, so the buyer brought in, they funded the $297,000 purchase sale price. And then what I owed the original seller was that $190 just came out of there along with.
So did they have a second or a
They
lien
were
on
in
it
first
until it was
position.
completed?
Actually, the seller, or the previous owner was in first position. They held the only note on there, so they're, fully protected. So there's really, unless they need the cash right then and there, there was not a downside to them to going with that option. And they ended up netting them $194,800. So they ended up getting the most doing it that way.
Did you speak to the bank, make sure there was no due on sale?
They didn't know anything. We didn't have to, yeah.
Oh, they owned it free and clear.
They owned it free and clear, yeah. So that's when they own it free and clear, it makes it so clean and smooth to be able to structure things like this. On that note though, there are some ways to structure it to minimize the due on sale risk. And I don't have that built in here, but one thing, just a quick tip since you brought that up, is you can set up a trust in the name of that family that the loan is in, and then you just control the trust. And that it's so that way it's, you know, basically it looks like they just did some financial planning, you know, set up their, you know, they took their house out of their name and put it in the trust, and that can be a way to minimize the due on sale income if you decide to do it that way. So those postcards I send out, they're nothing fancy. They're just these guys here. That's for fun. Hey, turn this over. I'm going to talk to you about your property. And on the back, it's I buy houses as is message. I pay cash. I can close fast. It's all just all the convenience aspects that we bring to the table as investors. That we're not going to have to inspect it. We can do it as is. You know, no contingencies. And then, you know, eventually you send 100 out. 3 people will call you. I mean, it's, you know, yes, it's a low percentage, but it's a percentage, and that's the thing. We just play the numbers. Then I started sending out letters and posing if they're guilty for 119. So, but same idea with the letters. It's just another. Basically, it's just outflow, letting people know what you do, and then someone out there is going to ping. You know, it's going to resonate with them. It's going to ping back. So originally, when I started sending these out, you know, it's like, you know, I started on that just grassroots shoestring budget. My first answering solution, because I'm working at Verizon Wireless, can't pick up my phone all the time, even though we're allowed to use our phones at work because it's a cell phone store. My first solution was to set up an automated answering service. So they would call in after receiving a postcard, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I preface that here, so it's not like they know what to expect, and I go through a short message, basically reiterating this. That filters out who's not serious, who's really, who will consider selling their property at a discount and who won't. And so that was the next kind of progression. Here's Lincoln, and this was the first house that I used hard money on. So actually, the first time I had, so now I have this flip under my belt. I built up enough confidence to be able to break free from my day job. And in fact, after that first flip, I did. So yeah, January 2016, 11 years to the day, strategically planned. I left Verizon Wireless and became full-time hospital. So Lincoln, I came across this one actually just driving neighborhoods, what many call driving for dollars, looking for that next, opportunity. And it was just, timing was right. I was taking action, and I'm a big believer in we create luck. You create luck by taking action. I happen to be at the right place at the right time. There's a guy up front hammering in a red and white for sale by owner sign. Sweet. What do you want for the property? So we get to talking, and after he wanted to sell it, turns out similar situation. He was a landlord. Daughter was going to college, had some debt to pay off. It's like the typical kind of stories you hear. They're really out there. They really had, it just happens just like that. So this was a picture kind of mid-renovation, but we did come to an agreement on a purchase price of $170,000 on this one. Oh, 160. We wanted 170. Got it down to 160, and then this is the after. So from this to, there is a cartoon like from the 50s that was like really realistic, not realistic, but like a paintbrush came in and like painted this picture of his house and stuff and this fence, and this one reminds me of that. And if you can get the reference, it's awesome. If not, I'm going to put that now in the next slide because it's kind of goes from like this to this like cute cartoon looking house. Not trashed on the inside, but went from this kind of just rental spec to something much nicer. But still, it's it's Formica. This is actually a linoleum. This is Home Depot, as you can tell. This is nothing fancy, Home Depot spec, but in this neighborhood, it's exactly what's called for. It's exactly on par with the level of finish, and that's another thing you want to make sure of. You don't want to overdo the house. You want to just meet what the nicest level homes are selling for in that neighborhood. So to break down the numbers on this one, purchase price was 160, repairs 26, closing costs and commissions totaled just under 18,000. I had interest because on this one I borrowed the money. I did put 20% down, but even after basically splitting a big chunk of that profit with a hard money lender, because you know what's better, have part of something or all of nothing. Well, I'll take 2/3, no problem. So even after borrowing that money, still ended up netting a profit of 25K. And that's actually after reducing our sale price. Initially, we thought our after repair value was going to be 249. It sat too long, and when you're in the house flipping business, when you're into house flipping as a business for a business, the velocity of money is important. You don't want to just sit there and wait till you can max out and squeeze everything out of it. You're better off taking a little bit less, getting that money working for you on into the next deal. So,
Did you figure out your holding costs when you went into it?
I did, yeah. Ahead of time, I do look at that. I look at especially if I'm borrowing, hard money, then I use a calculator now that kind of shows profit and takes into account what your ARV is. But I make sure that's a very important point you bring up too. If you're looking at how much profit's in the deal, if you're using other people's money, take that into account because it's going to come directly out of profit. There's not another, it's not coming out of closing costs, it's not coming out of repairs, it's not coming out of interest. So great to check over your numbers again and make sure that you're not missing the cost of money that can come into play. Because if it's not calculated right, if your offer's not where it needs to be, you'll end up making your lender money and you nothing. You don't want to be in that position. So what do I look for when I'm out driving for dollars? Well, I look for a number of things. I put together a guide that makes it easier because when I was first driving for dollars, I had this misconception that I'm looking for a house that's completely dilapidated. The windows are boarded up, it's falling apart, there's holes in the roof. Just this image of almost like a Disneyland haunted house, like that bad. And then I realized there's not that many houses like that, at least around here. It depends on where you go, but I developed an eye though, so I tried to make that something that I can teach people in an easier way, because it's not those houses you do want, but more often than not, you're looking for homes that are they're not completely falling apart. They might have some overgrown bushes, they may have aluminum framed windows with old shutters, on there. They might have an older looking, roof that may need to be replaced. So there's telltale signs. They may even have a no soliciting sign, or there's different signs depending on that aren't necessarily, doesn't have to be falling apart. So that's one of the things that I teach my students of, how to look for that. And then we write down the address, then we mark it to them in the same fashion with a postcard or a letter. So this was one in Lompoc, just about, that's about 45 minutes from me. So a lot of folks that work in Santa Barbara commute from Lompoc, so it's kind of a growing area. This particular one, the lesson in this one that was big to me in starting, was that this had a problem that no one else is willing to take on. And that's what made it available to me. That's why so many people would pass on it. Anybody want to take a guess?
Foundation.
Bingo. We said that.
What?
Nice. Good job. Foundation, yes. One first shot. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It's hard to see here, but the garage is this part here, was sinking about 6 inches or so below where the house was. And so it wasn't bank financeable, meaning the number of potential buyers is, that pool shrinks from everyone that could have bought it with a 30-year mortgage to, just pretty much cash-only buyers. So I look for things like that now. I look for fire-damaged properties. I look for foundation issues. I look for just stuff other people don't want that's where we make money solving those problems. So, randomly dropped in here, but this is what I use for when I'm assessing the condition of a property, walking through it to make sure I don't overlook potential repairs, but also to make it in an easy, like, I like to keep things simple. I like to make things as simple as possible for me to, okay, look at that. So basically, I walk through a property, I look at the garage door, and this, like I said, no construction background. So I look at it and I say, can I keep it? Do I need to repair it, or does it need to be completely replaced? And everything falls into one of those three categories. The little tick boxes, I'm showing up on the PowerPoint, but there's little tick boxes, and that's how I just make it easy to assess a house. You know, I brought contractors with me through on the first few, but over time I've developed just the ability to walk through a house and methodically, like, add up realistically what it's going to actually cost roughly to repair it. Here's the after of that one, and there's the view that shows. So right in here, this whole, that's kind of where the line is, where it's separated. You can see there's still, didn't bother, you know, to repair the driveway. So there's certain things you want to spend money on, and certain things you just like, you know, we went with the low maintenance yard. That way I avoided having to put in sprinklers. Yes?
So what did it take to repair that foundation of the garage?
Great question. $11,000.
And obviously,
And a contractor that knew what they were doing.
did you have to rip it out and redo it, or how'd you go about it?
No, okay, so, yeah, no, great question. So, I hired it all out, but what the contractor did was, they go in and basically can pump stuff in there and lift it back to where it needs to be. And that's my explanation of the process. Like, a process is kind of beyond me. Basically, I just know to bring in the people that are good and what they're good at and use their strengths.
Does it have to be permitted or?
So, and so you want to get with, you know, licensed contractors that already are familiar with that process, because then it just takes all of that headache away from you, you know, it gets done correctly. But it's because I was willing to take on that problem of, hey, this is, you know, no one else wants this, that I was able to get the property at that cost. And I was, you know, I knew nothing about foundation repair, and still not much about foundation repair, other than I can get a contractor in there to give me a bid, and if it makes sense, the numbers make sense, let's go for it. You know, if not, maybe my purchase price needs to be lower. So you don't have to know so much of this; you just have to piece together the right people. This is what we did with the kitchen there. I have a general kind of theme that I go for with most when we do complete renovations. It's like a modernized ranch style home. This one we did do the granite countertops. This is actually a tile. I'm using tile now, wood look tile. Always do the stainless steel appliance. Always do all new appliances. People like new, you know, they want that. They almost want their phone, their house to be like a brand new iPhone out of the box off the shelf kind of thing, especially with the, you know, first-time home buyers nowadays. A large majority of them want that turnkey. So we do just generally flat wet ceilings, a light French gray, sometimes an accent wall, sometimes not, and then just a general carpet that, you know, is not offensive. So the numbers on this one, so we purchased it for $203. Actually, I bought this one from a wholesaler. So someone actually, they had this property. They were in the position to buy it at $200. They were actually another seasoned investor, had already done flips, wholesale deals, but through just the power of networking and connecting, I met this gentleman, and he had too many projects at the time, and ended up wholesaling it to me for $3,000. So basically, by connecting to someone else in the industry, just networking, that's kind of another way. So I like to kind of just touch on the different deal sources as well. So the first one came from just hard work, just putting out ads on Craigslist. The next one was some driving for $1, or the next one was a direct mail. There was some driving for $. This one was relationship based. So kind of all sorts of different sources. And this one from who you might think as competition, or from someone who you might think would be competition, but not really, because I found there's so much more advantage in those bandit signs, or the signs you see on telephone poles that say we buy houses. There's so much more value in calling those numbers and building relationships with those people than there is, trying to put your sign up next to them or trying to compete for the same deal. So